I moved to Ravenside High on a morning in October. Crimson maple leaves fell thick over the streets of New York. The sky was vividly blue and the air crisp and cool. But the moment I stood before the old stone gates of this school, I knew there was no autumn here. Above the gray-black arch was a rusted inscription, Ravenside High School, 1894. The light that filtered through the gate didn't resemble daylight. It was as if it passed through a layer of murky glass, making everything dull, cold, and lifeless. I couldn't explain why, but right then, a vague and suffocating feeling rose within me, like I had just stepped into a place that didn't belong to this world. The hallway inside was long and eerily silent. My footsteps echoed like I was walking through an abandoned morgue. The stone walls were damp and moldy, the ceiling unbearably high, and there was a warm, musty smell, like time itself had rotted into the bricks. I had studied at many schools before, but none had made me feel so cautious, to the point where I didn't even dare to breathe heavily while walking. Everything here was too quiet, too perfect, to the point of being fake. The first thing I noticed, this school didn't have a single security camera. Not in the hallways, not at the gates, not even in the cafeteria. When I asked a student in class, he just shrugged and said, "There used to be." But after what happened, they removed them all. I asked what happened, but he didn't answer. He just looked at me, like he was silently judging how long I would last here. The only person who treated me normally was Chloe Bennett, a girl with quiet gray eyes who observed more than she spoke. When she caught me staring at the empty walls, she softly said, "Don't ask too many questions. Here, there are things best left unspoken." I joked, "Like what, ghosts?" But Chloe didn't smile. She only looked at me and slowly repeated, "Don't go to the third floor, don't stay past 6 p.m., and never, ever touch the door to room 302. At the time, I thought Chloe was just trying to scare the new kid, until I stayed late the next day to finish some paperwork. When I stepped out of the administrative office, the clock read 6:17. The hallways were empty. The fluorescent lights flickered. I started walking quickly toward the exit when I heard the first sound, the slow drag of a chair from upstairs. A clear, rhythmic, spine-chilling sound. I froze. The steel chains blocking the third floor were hanging loose, the padlock wide open, and there were muddy, soaked footprints leading from the first step upward, as if someone or something had crawled through not long before I got there. I don't know why I started climbing. 1 step, 2 steps. On the 3rd step I stopped. There was a small, white canvas shoe with blood on the heel, lying askew. The laces were undone, dangling, like someone had run away so fast they dropped it. And in that exact moment, the lights behind me went out. The entire hallway sank into thick darkness. No more footsteps. No more wind, only a cold breath brushing against my neck, and a whisper hissing into my ear, like someone was standing right behind me, but I couldn't turn to look.
Emily is still here.
The next morning, I saw her photo for the first time, Emily Sanders. In a dusty old frame at the school library, she was smiling faintly, her head tilted slightly, her hair tied with a small white ribbon. The moment I looked at the photo, I felt her eyes were looking back at me from behind the glass. I asked her, "Who's Emily?" She didn't look at me. She only replied with a breath that sank deep, as if a memory was pulling her back to a place she had tried to forget. A victim, the only one who died in a room with no exit, and the last person who ever stepped into room 302, and never stepped out again. They say 3 a.m. is when the dead whisper, when silence isn't really silence, and something watches you from the dark corners you refuse to look at. I never believed it until the night my door opened on its own. It was exactly 3 a.m. The clock struck once, twice, 3 times. Then my door creaked open, slowly, almost carefully. Not because of wind, not because someone knocked. It opened like something had been waiting just outside. I stared into the hallway, complete darkness, but at the very end, near the staircase that leads to the forbidden 3rd floor, I saw her. Emily. She was just standing there, still, unmoving. Her long hair was wet, like she'd been dragged out of a lake. Her school uniform was torn and soaked in something dark. I couldn't see her eyes, but I felt them staring directly into mine. And then she moved. Not her whole body, just her neck. It twisted, slowly, until her head faced me completely, while her torso remained still. The sound it made was like branches snapping. I gasped, fell back, and in a blink, she was gone. But room 302, the door was open. I don't know why I went upstairs. I didn't want to, but something pulled me, not with hands, with something deeper, like a hook in my spine, tugging me through the dark. The 3rd floor was colder. The lights flickered overhead like dying fireflies. I approached room 302. The door was already cracked open. I stepped inside. The room was empty. No desks, no signs of class. Just a tall mirror in the center, cracked and old, and on the wall, an antique clock, its hands spinning backwards. I walked toward the mirror and froze. The reflection wasn't me, it was her.
Emily?
She smiled at me, but her eyes were hollow, empty. She raised her hand and waved slowly, like she'd been waiting for me to arrive. Then the mirror shattered. The walls bled. The air changed, filled with static and whispers. Voices screamed, laughed, cried all at once. I turned to run, but the door was gone. It had vanished. The room was now sealed in concrete. And then I heard footsteps behind me, soft, slow, getting closer. A voice, her voice, whispered right beside my ear. "Thank you for opening the door." I spun around. No one. Just an old rusted key lying at my feet. Next to it, a torn, yellowed paper with a note. Emily was the last one to open the door. "You are next." I jolted awake in my bed, gasping. My heart racing. It had to be a dream, right? Until I looked under my pillow and found the exact same rusted key. And just then, my door opened again. Ethan could no longer tell the difference between dreams and reality. For 3 nights in a row, he found himself trapped in the same nightmare. A long, decaying hallway stretching endlessly into darkness, the walls flaking like rotting flesh. At the very end, a door stood slightly ajar. Room 302. Inside, something was always waiting. It never moved, never spoke, but Ethan could feel its gaze burning through the darkness. Each time he woke, his heart pounded violently, drenched in cold sweat, as if he'd just escaped something ancient. But the terror didn't stop there. That morning, he received an anonymous email. No sender, no subject. Just a single file attached, named 302 Final Me 4. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. The video showed grainy footage from the school's 3rd floor at 3 a.m. Static buzzed. Then a girl appeared, barefoot, her long hair covering her face, wearing an outdated school uniform no one had worn in years. She moved slowly toward room 302, then stopped and turned toward the camera. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She had no face, just a smooth layer of pale skin like melted wax. And behind her, something began to crawl out from the darkness. It was the size of a full-grown human but moved with twisted, broken limbs, dragging itself forward on elbows and knees. A small, bleeding hole sat at the center of its forehead, oozing thick black blood. Ethan slammed the laptop shut, heart racing, and tried to delete the video, but it kept reappearing, always returning to his desktop. On the third attempt, the screen flickered and glitched. Then a message appeared, typed out by itself. You saw her. She saw you, too. Come back to room 302. That night, Ethan did everything to feel safe. He turned off the lights, unplugged the internet, locked every door. But at exactly 3:03 a.m., 3 slow knocks echoed. Not from the hallway, but from inside the wall. Then came a whisper, chilling and breathy, right beside his ear. Ethan, you still don't remember, do you? Unable to stay still, Ethan ran up to the third floor. Room 302 was wide open. Dust hung in the air. In the center stood a tall mirror covered in cracks. Ethan stepped inside and looked into the mirror. What he saw wasn't his reflection. It was a younger version of himself, wearing the same old uniform, eyes filled with terror. Behind his mirrored self sat rows of faceless students, perfectly still, and at the back was Liam, his best friend, who had disappeared last year. Liam? Ethan whispered. Liam slowly turned his head and smiled, but it wasn't a smile. His mouth had been sliced open and crudely stitched back together with black thread. The mirror shattered. Darkness swallowed the room. When Ethan woke, he was lying on the cold floor of room 3.2. Strange symbols were drawn in blood across the ceiling, and just above him a message was carved into the wall. You've been chosen. Now bring the next one in. Ethan is still alive, but something inside him has changed. Ever since the night Maya appeared at his door, leaving behind that blood-stained bracelet, nothing has felt real. Time slips, memories blur, and the clock in his room always stops at 3:03 a.m. The school's third floor remains sealed, but Ethan hears sounds coming from it. Low scratching, like nails against wood, and sometimes voices, faint, calling his name. One night, Ethan dreams he's back in class, but everyone is facing backwards, their heads wrapped in black cloth. No faces. Only the sound of dozens whispering in unison. One of us. One of us. The chanting grows louder, rising like a storm inside his skull. He tries to scream but can't. Then he sees her. Maya, standing by the teacher's desk, her neck twisted unnaturally, her dead eyes fixed on his, and she says, "Why did you leave me there?" Ethan wakes up in terror, but something is wrong. In the mirror across the room, he sees himself, still asleep, smiling faintly. The reflection doesn't follow his movements. It stares, as if it knows. The next morning, Ethan checks the student system. His name is gone, deleted. His teacher says he was never on the roster. No one remembers him being in class, except one little girl in the hallway. She stops, looks into his eyes, and whispers, "You've already been replaced." Later that night, drawn by something he can't explain, Ethan returns to the third floor. The door to room 302 creaks open by itself. Cold air rushes past him. On the walls inside, scratch marks form words carved with fingernails. "I'm still here. It took my soul. Don't look in the mirror." Suddenly, the lights go out. Darkness swallows everything, and then The breathing starts. Not his own. Deep, wet, getting closer. He turns on his flashlight. The beam reveals a wax doll lying on the floor with his own face. Its eyes open. And behind him, a cold hand touches his shoulder. He spins around. No one's there. But in the mirror, the other Ethan is watching, still smiling. Slowly, the reflection lifts one finger to its lips and whispers, "Sure." Ever since the door on the third floor creaked open at exactly 3 a.m., Ethan had begun to question everything around him. Shadows felt longer. Hallways seemed to whisper. Even mirrors seemed to reflect more than just his image. Then the new student arrived. At first glance, Ethan's blood froze. The boy looked identical to him. Same haircut, same uniform, even the same scuffed sneakers. But his eyes, they were empty, lifeless. When their gazes met, the boy leaned close and whispered,
"You've borrowed this life long enough."
That night, Ethan dreamt of his classroom. Dim, silent. He sat alone, but he wasn't alone for long. From behind the blackboard, someone stepped out. Same face, same clothes. But something was wrong. The figure walked toward him, placed a cold hand on Ethan's shoulder, and murmured, "You really thought you were the only one." Ethan jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The next day after class, he searched the new boy's desk and found a black notebook. No name, no label. Inside, at the end of each entry, was a single red line. "He doesn't know yet, but soon." As Ethan left the classroom, the school felt wrong. The lights dimmed, the air buzzed. Passing the second-floor bathroom, he heard water running. Inside, the sink was dry, yet someone stood at the mirror, washing their face. Ethan stepped closer. The figure looked like him, but wasn't. Its eyes were black voids. A bleeding hole pulsed in the center of its forehead. It didn't turn, but its reflection did. And it smiled. That night, Ethan's phone rang. No caller ID. He answered, breathing. Then a whisper. His own voice. "They're forgetting you, Ethan. I'm almost there." The next morning, no one in class looked at him. He called out, but no one responded. On the board, his name was crossed out, replaced with the new boy's. And in Ethan's old seat, the imposter sat, smiling. Ethan realized the truth. He wasn't being haunted. He was being replaced. Ever since the third-floor door creaked open at exactly 3 a.m. that night, Ethan felt something shift. The world didn't change completely, just enough to make him feel misplaced. His classroom was still noisy, his friends still laughed, but Ethan felt invisible. Friends no longer called his name. Teachers skipped over him. One morning, someone even took his seat and no one seemed to notice. It was as if he was slowly being erased. And then came the mirrors. Whenever Ethan passed by one, he would catch fleeting glimpses of something off. Not the light, not the angle, but his own face. The reflection looked hollow, eyes darker, lips pale. And sometimes it didn't move with him. It stood still, watching, not reflecting. One night, while brushing his teeth in the dorm bathroom, Ethan looked up and froze. His reflection wasn't copying him. It was hunched over the sink, trembling. Then it slowly raised its head. "I know you're scared," it whispered, though its lips never moved. "But only one Ethan can stay." Ethan stumbled back, nearly slipping. But when he looked again, it was gone. Normal. Like nothing ever happened, but deep inside, he knew It was real. The next day, Ethan followed the new student, the one who looked eerily identical to him. He stuck into his dorm room while the boy was gone. Everything was the same. The posters, the books, even the way the blanket was folded, as if the room had belonged to Ethan all along. Under the pillow, he found an old wooden box. Inside, dozens of faded photos. Each picture showed someone who looked just like Ethan. Same eyes, same smile, same expression, terrified. Each one was labeled in shaky handwriting.
Replaced. Forgotten. Next.
That night, the mirror in Ethan's room cracked, just slightly, like something inside wanted out. He threw a cloth over it and shoved it under his bed. But at 3 a.m., he woke to a sound.
Knock, knock, knock.
The mirror had stood itself up again, reflecting not his room, but a long, damp corridor. At the end of that hallway stood another Ethan, half shadow, half human, with pitch black eyes and a grin that stretched unnaturally wide. "Open the door," it said in Ethan's voice. "We need to finish this." Panicking, Ethan rushed forward to smash the mirror. But he couldn't. The glass was cold and solid, unbreakable. And from inside, more voices whispered, "You're not the original. You were never meant to last. He's replaced them before. You're next." By morning, the mirror had shattered, but Ethan was gone. And in that day's attendance list, a familiar name still remained. But it wasn't our Ethan. Since the night Ethan disappeared, no one spoke of him again. It was as if he'd never existed. No announcements, no calls. His name vanished from every list. His seat at school quietly reassigned. Only Madeline remembered. They weren't close, barely even friends, but the look in his eyes before he vanished, wild, terrified, begging, haunted her. 1 week later, she woke at 2:30 a.m. to a message from a blocked number. "The hallway moves. Don't follow the clock." It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a warning. The next day in the third-floor library, she found a forgotten blueprint of the school. Among the faded lines was a hallway that didn't exist anymore, connected to the east wing. That night, something impelled her to return to school, alone. She found the door. No label, no handle, just a crack, wide enough to slip through. Inside was a hallway, long, cold, wrong. The walls were damp, the floor uneven, and the light overhead flickered weakly. She walked 5 steps, 10, 15. Then a click owed behind her. She turned. The door was gone. Only wall remained. She checked her phone. No service. 3:03 a.m. A soft, dragging sound echoed. Nails on stone. She froze. The sound stopped. She moved. It followed. She turned. Nothing. But then, at the end of the hallway, a figure appeared, unmoving, back turned, human, perhaps. She blinked, and it was in front of her. Hollow eyes, mouth sewn shut, blood dripping from the corners.
It was Ethan.
He raised a trembling hand, pointing behind her. She turned, and the hallway twisted. Walls bled shadows. The lights exploded above her. Mirrors lined the corridor, each one showing her dying a different way. No escape. The hallway shrank. The air thickened. Madeline ran through the pitch-black hallway, her heartbeat thundering louder than her footsteps. The 4th floor, once locked down after Emily's mysterious death, was now wide open. It felt like the darkness itself had been waiting. The air was heavy and unnaturally cold. Each breath stung like ice. Lights above flickered weakly, casting long shadows that twisted and danced. She searched for Ethan. He had vanished. Only silence answered her. But then, soft footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. No one. Still, the feeling of being watched crept over her like a shroud. At the end of the corridor, a door once sealed by rusted chains now stood open. Inside was a classroom long forgotten. Dust clung to every surface, the smell of mold and old paper overwhelming. On the chalkboard, a message had been scrawled in jagged letters.
I never left.
A chill ran down her spine. She clutched the laptop tighter, the one Ethan had found. The screen suddenly lit up with a grainy black and white video. A hidden camera? It showed Ethan standing alone in this very room. The lights flickered. Behind him, something moved. A tall, faceless figure began crawling forward with limbs bent the wrong way. Ethan turned, but too late. The screen cut to black. A scream. Then, nothing. Madeline backed away as the classroom door slammed shut behind her. She was trapped. The air thickened. Walls groaned. A mirror above the blackboard began to shake violently. In its reflection, Ethan, pale, hollow, reaching for her. He mouthed words she couldn't hear. "Ethan?" she whispered, but the faceless figure returned behind him, dragging him into the dark. Ethan vanished. The mirror cracked. Madeline screamed. Red words oozed across the wall. "The door is open. A soul has been chosen. Only one may leave." Suddenly, the teacher's desk creaked. A trapdoor beneath it opened, revealing a faint light. Without thinking, she crawled down as mad laughter echoed behind her. She burst out into the daylight. Paramedics rushed to her. Police swarmed the area. She passed out. 3 days later, she awoke in a hospital bed. She told the investigators everything. They found no Ethan. No evidence, no camera. The classroom didn't even exist on the blueprints. They said it was trauma, hallucinations, stress. Then a nurse handed her backpack back. Inside, the laptop, still on. One message displayed on the screen. "You escaped, but I didn't. Don't come back. Ethan." Madeline stared at the message. Silent tears fell. She had survived, but something inside her didn't. And Ethan was gone. The school was demolished weeks later, but those who live nearby say that every night, exactly at 3 a.m., they hear knocking on their doors and a voice, soft and desperate,